I never thought I would witness my own death. The searing pain in my chest brought me to my knees at my parents' anniversary party. As I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, my vision tunneling, I heard my sister Amanda's voice cut through the panic. "He's faking it," she told the paramedics confidently. "He always does this for attention." I felt my heart literally stop as the medical team hesitated. Later, from my hospital bed, I overheard Amanda still insisting I had exaggerated everything despite the doctors confirming cardiac arrest. That moment changed everything between us forever. Growing up in Westfield, Pennsylvania, Amanda and I were only 2 years apart, but couldn't have been more different. I was 34, she was 32, and our relationship had always been complicated. As kids, we shared the typical sibling bonds, building forts in the backyard and riding bikes down Maple Street until sunset. But even in those early days, there were signs of the trouble to come. Amanda always had to win. Board games ended with upturned tables if she lost. School competitions became battlegrounds, while I enjoyed learning for its own sake, earning mostly. As without much effort, Amanda struggled despite working twice as hard. My report cards were displayed proudly on the refrigerator, while hers were quietly acknowledged with encouragement to try harder next time. "Patrick has a natural gift," our mother would say, not realizing how those words cut into Amanda's confidence. Our father, a mechanical engineer with a pragmatic worldview, unintentionally fostered competition between us. "First one to finish mowing gets to pick the movie tonight," he would announce, turning chores into contests. I often let Amanda win these challenges, sensing her desperate need for approval. But she always knew when I was holding back, making her victories feel hollow. High school widened the gap between us. I joined the debate team and excelled in math and science. Amanda floated between social groups, never quite finding her place. When I was elected class president in my junior year, Amanda stopped speaking to me for 2 weeks. Our parents attributed it to teenage drama, but I recognized it as something deeper and more concerning. Despite the growing tension, I tried to protect our relationship. When Amanda faced rejection from her dream college, while I received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities, I deliberately chose a school closer to home to avoid making her feel inferior. But even that decision backfired. "I don't need your pity choices," she snapped when I told her my plans. "Go to Cornell. We all know you want to." So I did, and the physical distance between us during college years created an emotional chasm that never fully closed. We drifted into a surface-level relationship, exchanging pleasantries at holidays but rarely engaging in meaningful conversation. After graduation, I moved to Chicago and built a successful career as an architect, designing commercial buildings that won several industry awards. Amanda stayed closer to home, cycling through various jobs in retail, administration, and eventually real estate, never seeming to find satisfaction. 6 months ago, I moved back to Westfield when our father began showing early signs of Parkinson's. I wanted to help our parents transition into this new phase of their lives, and perhaps naively, I hoped to rebuild my relationship with Amanda as adults. The first signs of trouble appeared during a family dinner shortly after my return. Our father kept asking about my latest building project, barely acknowledging Amanda's recent real estate certification. "Patrick always knew what he wanted," he said proudly, squeezing my shoulder, focused from day one. I noticed Amanda's knuckles whitening around her fork, her smile tightening into a grimace. After dinner, I overheard her telling our mother that my architecture firm was struggling financially, a complete fabrication that I chose not to correct, not wanting to create conflict so soon after returning. Over the following weeks, I noticed small lies Amanda told about me to family and friends. She mentioned I had been let go from my previous position, when in fact, I had voluntarily left to move closer to our parents. She suggested my condominium in Chicago had been foreclosed upon, rather than sold at a profit. These were minor falsehoods that seemed petty but puzzling. I dismissed them as harmless attempts to make herself feel more secure. Then came the alumni gathering at our old high school. I attended out of curiosity, interested in seeing how old classmates had fared over the years. The evening turned uncomfortable when Trevor Hamilton, now a professor at the local community college, approached me with an odd expression. "So, Amanda told us about your struggles in architecture school," he said, lowering his voice sympathetically. "Must have been tough, having to cheat your way through those technical classes." I nearly choked on my drink. "Excuse me?" "She mentioned the plagiarism issues with your senior project," Trevor continued. "But hey, we've all cut corners somewhere, right?" As I drove home that night, my mind reeled with the implications of what Trevor had said. This wasn't a small embellishment or white lie. This was character assassination, deliberately undermining my professional reputation and integrity. The question was why? What could Amanda possibly gain from spreading such damaging rumors about her own brother? The answer hit me with stunning clarity. If she couldn't rise to my level of success, she would try to bring me down to hers. The revelation was both shocking and profoundly sad. My own sister, someone I had protected and supported throughout our lives, was actively working to destroy my reputation. The morning after the alumni gathering, I called Amanda and asked to meet at the local coffee shop, a neutral territory where we could talk privately. She arrived 20 minutes late, offering no apology, her face a mask of practiced innocence. "Is something wrong?" she asked, stirring her latte with exaggerated concern. "I ran into Trevor Hamilton last night," I said, watching her expression carefully. "He mentioned some interesting things you told him about my time in architecture school." Amanda's face remained impressively impassive. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "You told him I cheated my way through college, Amanda. You said my senior project was plagiarized." She laughed, the sound brittle and false. "That's ridiculous. Trevor must have misunderstood something I said. You know how people twist things." Despite my pressing, she denied everything, eventually turning the accusation back on me. "You've always been so paranoid, Patrick. This is why people worry about you." I left the coffee shop feeling frustrated and gaslighted, questioning whether Trevor had indeed misunderstood. But over the next few weeks, similar conversations with other acquaintances confirmed that Amanda had been systematically spreading lies about me throughout our social circle. The situation worsened when Jessica, a woman I had been dating for about a month, suddenly became distant and eventually broke things off. "I just don't think I can be with someone who's still hung up on his ex," she explained during our final conversation. "What ex?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Amanda told me about Sarah, how you're still in love with her, and just using me as a distraction. I appreciate the honesty, even if it didn't come directly from you. There was no Sarah. There hadn't been a serious relationship since my move back to Westfield. The fabrication was so specific and deliberate that it left me speechless. Jessica left before I could form a coherent response, and my attempts to contact her afterward went unanswered. Meanwhile, our parents' 40th anniversary approached, creating unavoidable interactions with Amanda. Our mother wanted a celebration at the country club with family and close friends, and despite my better judgment, I agreed to help plan it. "You two working together will be wonderful," our mother said, clearly hoping the project would bring us closer. Amanda immediately volunteered to co-organize but quickly took complete control. She scheduled planning meetings when I had standing client calls, made decisions without consulting me, and presented herself to our parents as the dedicated child handling everything while I was too busy to participate. During this time, I began experiencing concerning health symptoms, occasional chest pains, shortness of breath, and heart palpitations that would wake me at night. At first, I attributed them to the stress of dealing with Amanda and the adjustment of moving back to my hometown. But when I nearly passed out while climbing a flight of stairs, I finally made an appointment with a cardiologist. Dr. Lawson ran several tests and delivered news that was concerning but not entirely surprising. "Your EKG shows some abnormalities consistent with stress-induced arrhythmia, but there's also evidence suggesting a genetic component. Has anyone in your family had heart issues?" I mentioned our paternal grandfather who died of a heart attack in his 50s. Dr. Lawson nodded gravely. "Given your family history and current symptoms, I want you to start on medication immediately and make some lifestyle changes. Reduce stress wherever possible." I nearly laughed at the irony. Reducing stress seemed impossible with Amanda's constant undermining and our parents' anniversary just weeks away. As I was leaving Dr. Lawson's office, I received a call from our father, asking if I would give a speech at the anniversary party. "Your mother would love it, and you've always had a way with words," he said. I agreed, not having the heart to refuse him. When I mentioned the speech to Amanda during our next planning meeting, her expression darkened. "Dad asked you specifically? Why am I not surprised?" "He probably asked you too," I suggested, trying to diffuse the tension. "No, Patrick. Once again, you're the chosen one," she replied, her voice dripping with resentment. That evening, I discovered something troubling while helping our mother organize financial documents for tax season. Amanda had been borrowing substantial sums from our parents over the past year, totaling nearly $20,000, with no evidence of repayment. When I delicately broached the subject with our father, he seemed uncomfortable and changed the topic quickly, protecting Amanda as he had always done when it came to her mistakes. In a final attempt to repair our relationship before the anniversary party, I invited Amanda to dinner at her favorite restaurant. For the first hour, the conversation remained superficially pleasant as we discussed safe topics like local news and childhood memories. But when I gently raised my concerns about our current relationship, everything unraveled. "I've noticed things have been tense between us," I began carefully. "If I've done something to upset you, I'd like to understand so we can work through it." Amanda's facade cracked, revealing the simmering anger beneath. "Of course, St. Patrick, always so understanding and magnanimous, it must be nice to be perfect." "I'm far from perfect, Amanda. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation." "Honest? You want honest?" Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby diners. "How about honestly acknowledging that everything has always come easily to you, while I've had to fight for every scrap of recognition? How about honestly admitting that our parents worship the ground you walk on while I'm an afterthought?" Her words stunned me into silence, not because they were true, but because they revealed how thoroughly distorted her perception had become. We left the restaurant in uncomfortable silence, no closer to resolution than before. The following weekend, while helping a friend move, I discovered that Amanda's campaign against me went far beyond casual rumor spreading. Jake, my closest friend since high school, reluctantly showed me several audio recordings Amanda had sent to mutual friends. They were conversations between Amanda and me, selectively edited to make me sound arrogant, dismissive, and even cruel. In one particularly manipulated clip, innocent comments about a family friend's business decisions were cut together to sound as though I was mocking their financial struggles. "She's been sending these to everyone," Jake admitted. "I thought you should know. This isn't normal sibling rivalry, Patrick. Something's seriously wrong here." As the anniversary party drew closer, my health continued to deteriorate. The medication Dr. Lawson prescribed helped with the palpitations, but left me feeling fatigued. Between managing my architectural projects, helping our parents, and navigating Amanda's increasingly hostile behavior, my body was showing clear signs of strain. But I was determined to make our parents' celebration perfect, regardless of the personal cost. 2 weeks before our parents' anniversary party, I was reviewing building plans with a client when the room suddenly began to spin. My vision blurred, my heart raced erratically, and before I could excuse myself, I collapsed onto the conference room floor. My assistant called an ambulance, and I was rushed to Westfield Memorial Hospital. In the emergency room, Dr. Lawson ordered a comprehensive cardiac workup including an echocardiogram, stress test, and blood work. The results were more serious than we had initially thought. "Patrick, you have a congenital heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy," he explained, showing me the imaging of my heart. "It's a thickening of the heart muscle that makes it harder for your heart to pump blood. It's likely been present since birth but has only recently become symptomatic due to stress and age." "What does this mean going forward?" I asked, trying to process the diagnosis. "We need to adjust your medication immediately, and you'll need to make significant lifestyle changes. Stress reduction isn't just recommended now, it's essential. Another episode like today could be far more serious, potentially even fatal." I left the hospital with a new prescription and strict instructions to avoid strenuous activity and emotional stress. The irony wasn't lost on me. With the anniversary party looming, and Amanda's behavior growing more erratic, stress seemed unavoidable. After careful consideration, I decided to keep my condition private until after the celebration. Our parents had enough concerns with my father's Parkinson's, and I didn't want to overshadow their anniversary with worries about my health. I would tell them after the party, when the timing felt more appropriate. Unfortunately, Amanda discovered my medication while stopping by my apartment to drop off party planning materials. She entered the bathroom without permission and emerged holding the orange prescription bottle, her face a mixture of curiosity and accusation. "What exactly are you taking, Patrick?" she asked, examining the label with exaggerated concern. I considered lying but realized this might be an opportunity for genuine connection. Perhaps my health crisis could bridge the growing gap between us. "I have a heart condition," I explained, taking the bottle from her hands. "It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The medication helps regulate my heartbeat." Amanda's expression softened momentarily, a glimpse of the sister I remembered from childhood. "That sounds serious. Are Mom and Dad aware?" "Not yet. I don't want to worry them before their anniversary. I'd appreciate if you'd keep this between us for now." She nodded solemnly. "Of course. Families should support each other through health crises." She even hugged me before leaving, the first genuine physical contact between us in months. For a few days, I allowed myself to hope that my condition might have sparked a reconciliation. Amanda called to check on me, brought over heart-healthy meals, and seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. The shift was so dramatic that I wondered if I had misjudged her intentions all along. My optimism evaporated the following Sunday during dinner at our parents' house. My mother served lasagna, my favorite comfort food from childhood, and mentioned she had made it specially because Amanda had told them I was going through a difficult time. "Amanda mentioned you might be having some health issues," my father said cautiously. "Something about heart problems?" I glanced at Amanda, who studiously avoided my gaze. "So much for keeping my condition private." "I'm managing a minor heart condition," I said, trying to minimize their concern. "Nothing serious, just taking some medication as a precaution." "That's not what Amanda told us," my mother interjected. "She said you might be making up health problems for attention because you're feeling overshadowed by her success in real estate." The accusation was so absurd that I momentarily lost the ability to speak. When I regained my composure, I calmly explained my diagnosis, the medication, and Dr. Lawson's recommendations. My parents seemed confused, caught between two contradicting narratives from their children. "We're just concerned," my father said diplomatically. "With my Parkinson's and now your heart, it seems like health issues are suddenly surrounding this family." After dinner, I confronted Amanda in the driveway. "You promised to keep my condition private." "I was worried about you," she replied with wide-eyed innocence. "And frankly, Patrick, you have been acting strangely since moving back. Claiming heart problems right before Mom and Dad's big celebration does seem convenient for getting attention." "I collapsed at work, Amanda. I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. This isn't something I'm making up." She shrugged. "If you say so, but you've always had a flair for drama when you're not the center of attention." I drove home that night with my heart literally aching, both from my medical condition and from the painful realization that my sister was not just resentful, but potentially dangerous to my well-being. She had taken something as serious as my health and twisted it into another weapon against me. The next morning, Jake called after speaking with my parents. "Your sister is telling people you're making up health problems," he said, his voice tight with anger. "And apparently she's suggesting you might have psychological issues rather than physical ones." Jake had become my strongest ally through this ordeal, witnessing Amanda's behavior firsthand and providing objective perspective. "You need to be careful, Patrick. This level of manipulation isn't normal, and with your heart condition, you can't afford to take risks." A few days later, I noticed something concerning about my medication. The pills looked slightly different than they had previously, a bit larger, and with a slightly different sheen. Alarmed, I called the pharmacy to verify the appearance of the medication, only to discover that what I had been taking for the past 3 days was not my prescribed heart medication at all. I took the pills to a local pharmacist who identified them as over-the-counter supplements that looked similar to my prescription, but had none of the active ingredients needed to regulate my heart condition. Someone had been tampering with my medication, replacing life-saving drugs with harmless but useless substitutes. The only person who had access to my apartment and knew about my medication was Amanda. The realization sent a chill through me. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or resentment. This was something far more disturbing and potentially life-threatening. My own sister had deliberately tampered with medication that my doctor had deemed essential for preventing another cardiac event. I immediately refilled my prescription, this time keeping it locked in a small safe in my bedroom. I also installed a simple security camera in my living room, not wanting to believe Amanda would enter my home without permission again, but unwilling to take chances with my health. The anniversary party was now just days away, and despite the doctor's warnings about stress, my anxiety was at an all-time high. My heart condition was worsening. My sister appeared to be actively working against my health, and my parents were caught in the middle, unsure what to believe about their own children. The evening of our parents' 40th anniversary party arrived with perfect weather, the country club gleaming under a clear June sky. Despite my growing health concerns, I was determined to make this night special for them. I arrived early to check the final arrangements, ensuring everything from the floral centerpieces to the anniversary cake met the standards our parents deserved. Guests began arriving at 6, filling the banquet hall with laughter and conversation. Our parents entered to applause, my father looking distinguished, despite the slight tremor in his left hand. My mother radiant in a royal blue dress she had purchased especially for the occasion. For their sake, I maintained a cheerful facade, greeting family friends and distant relatives with warm handshakes and genuine smiles. Amanda arrived fashionably late, commanding attention in a striking red dress. She hugged our parents dramatically, presenting them with an ostentatious gift, a weekend getaway package that I knew she couldn't possibly afford given her financial situation. Our mother cried with happiness while our father beamed with pride. "You shouldn't have, sweetheart," he said, embracing Amanda. "Only the best for you two," she replied, shooting me a triumphant glance over his shoulder. The first hour passed pleasantly enough. I mingled with guests, sipped water rather than champagne due to my medication, and tried to focus on celebrating my parents' remarkable marriage rather than my escalating health concerns. But as dinner progressed, I began to feel distinctly unwell. A persistent pressure built in my chest, my left arm tingled uncomfortably, and sweat beaded on my forehead despite the well-cooled room. After the main course, Amanda rose to deliver her speech. She spoke eloquently about our parents' devotion to each other, their sacrifices for their children, and their unwavering support through life's challenges. Then she pivoted unexpectedly. "And I want to give special thanks to my brother Patrick," she said, gesturing toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, who, despite his busy schedule and important career, managed to make time for our parents' special day. Some of us have been here consistently, handling the day-to-day challenges of aging parents, while others drop in when it's convenient. But we're all family, and that's what matters. The backhanded compliment hung in the air, creating an uncomfortable silence before she smoothly continued with more conventional sentiments. Our parents didn't seem to notice the subtle dig, but several guests shifted awkwardly in their seats, aware of the underlying hostility. By the time Amanda finished her speech, my condition had deteriorated significantly. The pressure in my chest had transformed into a gripping pain that radiated through my upper body. My breathing became labored, and the room occasionally tilted alarmingly. I discreetly stepped outside to call Dr. Lawson, who answered on the second ring. "Patrick, is everything all right?" I described my symptoms as calmly as possible, trying to minimize the sound of strain in my voice. "You need to go to the emergency room immediately," he responded without hesitation. "These symptoms suggest you may be experiencing a cardiac event. Do not drive yourself. Have someone take you or call an ambulance." "This is not something to wait on, Patrick." I ended the call and took a moment to collect myself. I didn't want to create a scene at my parents' celebration, but Dr. Lawson's urgency was clear. I decided to find Jake, ask him to drive me to the hospital, and explain to my parents later when the party had concluded. As I re-entered the banquet hall, the pain intensified dramatically. The room spun, Voices became distant and echoing, and my vision narrowed to a pinpoint. I gripped a nearby chair for support, but my legs buckled beneath me. I was vaguely aware of falling, of gasps and shouts from nearby guests, of my mother's panicked voice calling my name. Then Amanda was there, kneeling beside me as someone rolled me onto my back. Through the haze of pain and confusion, I heard her voice, controlled and authoritative. "He's fine," she was saying to the concerned circle gathering around us. "Patrick has always been a bit dramatic. He's probably just had too much to drink and is looking for attention." Even in my semi-conscious state, the cruelty of her words registered. Someone, perhaps Jake, objected strongly. "He hasn't had a single drink all night. He needs medical attention." "I'm his sister," Amanda countered. "I know him better than anyone. He pulls stunts like this when he's not the center of attention. Just give him space, and he'll miraculously recover once everyone's sufficiently concerned." The pain in my chest became unbearable, a vice grip squeezing my heart until I couldn't breathe. Darkness crept in from the edges of my vision as someone called 911. Time fragmented, stretching and compressing unpredictably. I heard sirens, felt hands checking my pulse, caught snippets of urgent conversation around me. The paramedics arrived quickly, professional and efficient. As they began assessment procedures, Amanda continued her campaign of dismissal. "He has a history of these episodes," she told them confidently. "It's psychosomatic. Our family doctor has confirmed there's nothing physically wrong with him." One of the paramedics hesitated, glancing from me to Amanda with uncertainty. That moment of hesitation, that split second where medical professionals questioned whether to treat me based on my sister's lies, would later haunt my nightmares. "He's on heart medication." Jake's voice cut through the confusion. "He has a diagnosed condition. Check his wallet. There's a medical alert card." Thank God for Jake. The paramedics found the card, immediately understood the severity of the situation, and sprang into action with renewed urgency. They attached electrodes to my chest, administered medication, and prepared for emergency transport. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness completely was Amanda's face hovering above me, not concerned but annoyed, as if my medical emergency was an inconvenient disruption to her evening. Then everything went black. I later learned that my heart had stopped completely in the ambulance. The paramedics performed CPR and used a defibrillator to restart my heart before we reached the hospital. I was clinically dead for approximately 47 seconds. The strangest part of the experience was that while unconscious, I maintained some level of awareness. I couldn't move or respond, but I could hear conversations around me, like listening to a radio play without being able to participate. This phenomenon, I would later learn, is not uncommon in cardiac patients and has been documented in medical literature, which is how I heard Amanda continuing her campaign of deception, even as doctors fought to save my life. "He's been acting strangely for months," she told someone in the hospital waiting room, her voice carrying to where I lay motionless. "Making up health problems, claiming persecution. Our family doctor suggested he might need psychiatric help, but he refused to consider it. This collapse is just another cry for attention." "Mrs. Wilson," a firm medical voice responded, "your brother is in critical condition following a confirmed cardiac arrest. His medical records clearly document a congenital heart condition exacerbated by stress. This is very much a real, life-threatening medical emergency, not a psychological episode." "Doctors can be fooled too," Amanda replied dismissively. "Patrick has always been convincing. Even at the brink of death, my sister couldn't acknowledge the truth. Her need to diminish me, to rewrite reality to fit her narrative, outweighed even the most basic human instinct to protect family. In that moment, drifting between consciousness and oblivion, I realized our relationship was beyond repair. Whatever sisterly love had once existed between us had been consumed by her resentment, leaving nothing but toxic ash. I woke up in the intensive care unit 3 days after the anniversary party, surrounded by beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant. My mother was dozing in a chair beside the bed, her face creased with worry even in sleep. My throat felt raw from the breathing tube that had recently been removed, and my chest ached both from the cardiac event and the CPR that had kept me alive. When I shifted slightly, My mother startled awake. "Patrick," she whispered, eyes filling with tears as she pressed the call button for the nurse. "You're back with us." Over the next few hours, through brief conversations limited by my weakened condition, I pieced together what had happened. After my heart stopped in the ambulance, the emergency team had resuscitated me and rushed me into surgery. Dr. Lawson, called in specially despite the late hour, had performed a procedure to regulate my heart rhythm and inserted a small device that would help prevent future cardiac arrests. "You literally died for almost a minute," Dr. Lawson explained during his morning rounds. "If your friend hadn't insisted on immediate treatment and provided your medical information, the outcome could have been very different." My parents visited daily, my father's Parkinson's tremor more pronounced from stress, my mother bringing homemade soup and tearful prayers for my recovery. Jake came whenever hospital policy allowed, bringing books, news from the outside world, and unwavering friendship. Notably absent was Amanda. She did visit, though seldom when others were present, and I quickly developed the habit of pretending to be asleep when she entered the room. This allowed me to observe her true behavior without the mask she wore for others. During one such visit, I listened as she spoke on her phone while standing near the window of my room, believing me unconscious. "Of course I'm at the hospital," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "I have to show support, even if we all know he's exaggerating the severity. The doctors are being cautious because they're afraid of lawsuits, but between us, there was no actual cardiac arrest. Just a severe anxiety attack that he's milking for all it's worth." The casual dismissal of my near-death experience was stunning. Medical records clearly documented my heart stopping, the emergency resuscitation, the surgery to address the underlying condition. Yet Amanda was still pushing her narrative that I was fabricating health concerns for attention. On another occasion, I overheard her speaking with a nurse outside my door. "Has my brother been asking for psychiatric consultation? He has a history of anxiety and hypochondria that our family doctor has been treating." "I'm not authorized to discuss another patient's treatment details," the nurse replied professionally. "But I can assure you that your brother's cardiac condition is very real and very serious." Of course, Amanda backpedaled smoothly. "I just want to make sure he's getting comprehensive care. Mental health can impact physical recovery, you know." Jake, visiting later that day, revealed he had been recording some of Amanda's more egregious statements using his phone. "I hate to do this, Patrick, but something's seriously wrong with her. She's telling completely different stories to different people, and none of them match reality. I thought you might need evidence at some point." He played back several clips. Amanda telling a family friend that I had been abusing prescription medication, leading to the collapse. Amanda suggesting to our father's brother that I had fabricated the heart condition to avoid professional responsibilities. Amanda implying to hospital staff that I had a history of self-harm for attention. "Why would she do this?" I asked, genuinely bewildered despite everything I already knew. What could she possibly gain from denying my medical condition, even after I nearly died? Jake hesitated before answering. "I think, in her mind, you being seriously ill makes you the center of attention again. She can't handle that. Your parents' concern for you diminishes their focus on her, and she can't tolerate being secondary in any situation." A sympathetic nurse, Elaine, who had witnessed some of Amanda's behavior, offered additional insight. "Your sister tried to access your medical records yesterday. She told the administrative staff she had power of attorney for your healthcare decisions. When they asked for documentation, she became quite agitated and left. The implications were chilling. What would Amanda have done with access to my medical information or decision-making power over my treatment? Given her history of tampering with my medication and minimizing my condition, I shuddered to think of the possibilities. Dr. Lawson arranged for a hospital psychiatrist to speak with me, not because he questioned my mental health, but because he recognized the psychological impact of what I had experienced. "Cardiac events are traumatic by themselves," Dr. Harris explained during our first session. "But having a family member actively undermine your medical care adds a layer of betrayal that can complicate recovery. How are you processing all of this?" "I'm struggling to understand it," I admitted. "This goes beyond normal sibling rivalry. It feels like Amanda actively wanted me to suffer, maybe even to die." "I can't diagnose someone I haven't evaluated," Dr. Harris said carefully, "but your sister's behavior, as you've described it, shows concerning patterns consistent with certain personality disorders. The systematic manipulation, the inability to acknowledge reality when it conflicts with her narrative, the apparent lack of empathy for your suffering, these are not typical family conflict behaviors." She recommended I establish clear boundaries with Amanda during my recovery and suggested resources for dealing with toxic family dynamics. Our conversation gave me a framework for understanding what was happening, even if it couldn't repair the damaged relationship. As my physical condition stabilized, I began gathering documentation of Amanda's behavior. Jake's recordings, witness statements from party guests who had heard her dismissing my condition to the paramedics, medical records confirming the cardiac arrest and underlying heart condition, and notes from hospital staff about her attempts to interfere with my care. I wasn't sure what I would do with this evidence, but instinct told me it might be necessary for protection. My parents struggled to reconcile the conflicting narratives. They loved both their children and couldn't comprehend the depth of dysfunction in our relationship. When I carefully described Amanda's behavior, including her tampering with my medication, my mother wept while my father paced the hospital room, his tremor worsening with distress. "There must be some misunderstanding," my mother suggested weakly. "Amanda wouldn't deliberately harm you." "I don't want to believe it either," I replied gently. "But the evidence is overwhelming, and her behavior nearly cost me my life." My father, always the practical problem solver, asked, "What do you want us to do, Patrick? She's our daughter, just as you're our son." "I don't expect you to choose between us," I assured them. "But I need you to understand that for my health and safety, I need to establish boundaries with Amanda. And I need you to respect those boundaries, even if you don't fully understand them." A week into my hospital stay, my doctor ordered a complete medical workup to assess my recovery progress. The results confirmed that while the immediate danger had passed, I would need ongoing management of my heart condition. The stress of recent months had significantly worsened my congenital condition, and another episode could prove fatal. "Stress reduction isn't just a recommendation anymore," Dr. Lawson emphasized. "It's essential for your survival. Whatever is causing this level of anxiety in your life needs to be addressed." The implication was clear. My relationship with Amanda was no longer just emotionally damaging. It was potentially lethal. As difficult as it would be, for my own survival, I needed to create distance from my sister's toxic influence. While gathering my medical records for discharge planning, I discovered something else disturbing. Amanda had been telling people she had legal authority over my medical decisions, but she had also been exploring my financial information. A hospital billing specialist revealed that Amanda had inquired about my insurance coverage, payment methods, and financial responsibility, presenting herself as my designated representative. When I mentioned this to Jake, he suggested we look deeper. If she's this interested in your medical finances, she might have been exploring other aspects of your financial life as well. With Jake's help, I ran a credit check and discovered what could only be described as systematic identity theft. Amanda had opened 3 credit cards in my name, accumulating over $30,000 in debt that I had been unaware of. She had also attempted to access my retirement accounts, though thankfully without success due to the security measures in place. The discovery left me breathless with shock. This went beyond sibling rivalry or even the manipulation of my medical condition. This was criminal activity that could have devastating consequences for my financial future. Combined with her interference in my medical care, the pattern showed a level of malice I could never have imagined from my own sister. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I was discharged with strict instructions to avoid stress and follow a careful regimen of medication and gradual physical rehabilitation. Jake insisted I stay with him rather than returning to my apartment, concerned that Amanda might have access or at least knowledge of where I kept my spare key. "You can't be too careful right now," he argued. "Not until you've figured out how to handle this situation long term." He was right. My cardiac event had been life-threatening, and my recovery remained fragile. Any additional stress could trigger another episode, potentially with worse outcomes. But I also knew that I couldn't begin true healing, either physical or emotional, until I confronted Amanda directly about her behavior. After careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Harris, I arranged to meet Amanda at the hospital cafeteria the day after my discharge. The location offered both privacy and the security of being in a medical facility with immediate help available if my condition worsened during what would undoubtedly be a stressful conversation. Amanda arrived precisely on time, immaculately dressed as always, a bouquet of flowers in hand as though she were the devoted sister visiting a recovering patient. The performance was flawless, but I now recognized it for what it was, a carefully constructed facade designed for any observers who might be watching. "Patrick, you're looking so much better," she exclaimed, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "We've all been so worried." "Have you really?" I asked quietly, not returning her embrace. "Because I have evidence suggesting otherwise." Her smile faltered slightly before reinforcing itself. "What are you talking about? Of course I've been concerned. You're my brother." I placed my phone on the table between us, a recording app open and ready. "I'm recording this conversation, Amanda, for my protection. I want to be clear about that from the start." "That seems unnecessary, and frankly a little paranoid," she replied, her voice taking on a concerned tone that might have seemed genuine to an outsider. "Are you feeling all right? Sometimes medication can cause anxiety and paranoia." "Let's start with the night of Mom and Dad's anniversary party," I continued, ignoring her attempt to question my mental state. "You told the paramedics I was faking my symptoms for attention, even after I collapsed and was clearly in medical distress. That delay in treatment could have killed me." "I was confused and panicked," she countered smoothly. "It was a chaotic situation, and I may have said something that was misinterpreted in the moment. You know how people exaggerate during crises." I played one of Jake's recordings, where she clearly told the paramedic I had a history of these episodes, and that it was psychosomatic with nothing physically wrong. Her words were unmistakable, her tone confident rather than panicked. Amanda's expression hardened slightly. "Recording conversations without consent is illegal in many states. Not in Pennsylvania, which has one-party consent laws. But let's not get sidetracked by legal technicalities. You deliberately interfered with my emergency medical care, Amanda. Why?" For a moment, she seemed to consider continuing the denials, but something in my steady gaze must have convinced her of the futility. Her expression shifted, the mask of concerned sister dropping away to reveal something colder and more calculating. "You've always been the favorite," she said, her voice low and bitter. "Perfect Patrick, the successful architect, the devoted son, the one everyone admires. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? Having every achievement measured against yours and found wanting? This isn't about healthy competition, Amanda. You tampered with my heart medication. You tried to convince medical professionals that my life-threatening condition was fake. You committed identity theft by opening credit cards in my name. These aren't the actions of someone feeling overlooked. They're calculated attempts to cause harm." Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of the credit cards. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have the credit reports, Amanda. I've already filed police reports for identity theft. The detective handling the case will likely want to speak with you soon." For the first time, a flicker of genuine concern crossed her face. "You're having me investigated by the police? Your own sister? After everything I've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Amanda? Spread rumors that I cheated in college? Sabotaged my relationships? Told our parents I'm making up health problems for attention? Stolen my identity? Please, explain to me what positive things you've contributed to my life recently." The direct challenge seemed to penetrate her defenses. For a brief moment, something like awareness flashed in her eyes, as though she were seeing her own behavior clearly for the first time, but it quickly disappeared behind renewed hostility. "You've always exaggerated everything," she said dismissively. "Always played the victim when things don't go your way. So dramatic, having a heart attack right in the middle of Mom and Dad's celebration, stealing their moment just like you steal everything else." Her complete disconnection from reality was stunning. My cardiac arrest, confirmed by medical records, ambulance reports, and multiple witnesses, was being framed as a deliberate attention-seeking strategy. In her distorted narrative, Even my near-death experience was somehow a calculated move against her. "I think you need help, Amanda," I said quietly. "Professional help. This level of resentment, these distortions of reality, they're not healthy or normal." "I need help?" She laughed bitterly. "That's rich, coming from you. You're the one who can't stand not being the center of attention. You're the one who had to move back to Westfield to insert yourself into our parents' lives just when I was finally building a relationship with them without your interference." I realized then that the conversation was pointless. Amanda was incapable of acknowledging reality when it conflicted with her internal narrative. No evidence, no rational argument, no appeal to familial bonds would penetrate the fortress of distortion she had built around herself. "This isn't productive," I said, standing carefully to avoid any sudden movements that might stress my heart. "I came hoping for some understanding, some acknowledgement of what's happened, but I can see that's not possible right now. Running away as usual when you don't get your way," she snapped. "No, Amanda. I'm choosing my health over a destructive argument, but you should know that I'm taking steps to protect myself going forward. I've documented everything. I've filed the necessary reports, and I'm establishing boundaries that I expect to be respected." "What does that mean?" she demanded. "It means I won't be participating in family events where you're present until you've sought help and demonstrated genuine change. It means I've asked our parents to keep any information about my health, finances, or personal life private from you. It means I'm pressing charges for the identity theft, which was a crime regardless of our relationship." Her face flushed with anger. "You'd do that to your own sister? Destroy my reputation, my future, over a few misunderstandings?" "They weren't misunderstandings, Amanda. They were deliberate choices that caused real harm. And yes, I would do that, not to hurt you, but to protect myself, and hopefully to create consequences that might motivate you to seek the help you clearly need." I left her sitting in the cafeteria, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. The conversation had gone exactly as Dr. Harris had predicted, with Amanda unable to accept responsibility or acknowledge the reality of her actions. But at least I had been direct and clear about my boundaries moving forward, which was the primary goal of the confrontation. Over the next few weeks, I worked with a family therapist who specialized in dysfunctional family dynamics to develop a comprehensive plan for protecting myself while still maintaining relationships with my parents. Dr. Mercer helped me craft clear, enforceable boundaries and communication strategies. "Your situation is particularly challenging," she explained, "because your sister's behavior isn't just emotionally harmful, it's potentially life-threatening given your cardiac condition. The stakes are unusually high." With Dr. Mercer's guidance, I scheduled a meeting with my parents at their home, deliberately when Amanda would be at work. I brought Jake for moral support and as a neutral witness, as well as documentation of everything I had discovered about Amanda's behavior. "This is going to be difficult to hear," I told my parents gently, "but I need you to understand why I'm taking these steps." Over the next 2 hours, I presented evidence of Amanda's systematic campaign against me: the medication tampering, the identity theft, the deliberate interference with my medical care, the ongoing attempts to undermine my reputation and relationships. I showed them Jake's recordings, the credit reports, statements from medical personnel, and my own careful documentation of incidents over the past several months. My mother wept openly, while my father sat in stunned silence, occasionally running a trembling hand through his thinning hair. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, even to parents who desperately wanted to believe the best of both their children. "We had no idea," my mother whispered. "We knew there was tension between you, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined." "What do we do now?" my father asked, his engineer's mind already seeking solutions to this family crisis. "I've consulted with several professionals," I explained. "A family therapist, my cardiologist, and an attorney. They all agree that for my health and safety, I need to create distance from Amanda until she gets professional help. I'm not asking you to cut her off or choose between us, but I am asking you to respect the boundaries I need to set." Those boundaries included not sharing information about my health, location, or personal life with Amanda, not arranging family gatherings where both of us would be present, and supporting the legal consequences of her identity theft without attempting to shield her from responsibility. The identity theft charges, especially I emphasized, might be the only thing that gets through to her. Sometimes legal consequences are the only way to break through denial this severe. My parents struggled with the implications, but ultimately agreed to respect my boundaries. They also, with heavy hearts, acknowledged that Amanda needed help beyond what they could provide as loving but untrained parents. "We'll support both of you," my father promised. "You in your recovery and boundaries, and Amanda in getting the help she needs." The family meeting concluded with a plan for moving forward. My parents would arrange an intervention for Amanda with professional support, presenting her with the evidence of her behavior and offering treatment options. If she refused, they would make it clear that while their love was unconditional, their support for destructive behavior was not. As I left my parents' house that day, I felt a complex mixture of grief and relief. The situation with Amanda was far from resolved, but I had taken concrete steps to protect myself while offering her a path to genuine help and potential reconciliation. For the first time in months, I felt hope that healing might be possible, even if the road ahead would be long and difficult. The intervention for Amanda took place 3 weeks after my meeting with our parents. Dr. Mercer facilitated, bringing in a psychiatrist specializing in personality disorders, while my parents, Jake and I, presented a united front of concern, mixed with firm boundaries. Amanda initially reacted with predictable outrage and denial, accusing us of conspiring against her and fabricating evidence. But when confronted with the irrefutable documentation, including police reports, medical records, audio recordings, and witness statements, her defensive facade began to crack. "Why are you all attacking me?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm the victim here. Patrick has always been the favorite, always gotten everything he wanted while I struggled for any recognition at all." Dr. Greenberg, the psychiatrist, spoke gently but firmly. "Amanda, I understand you feel hurt and overlooked. Those feelings are valid, but your responses to those feelings have become destructive, both to others and to yourself. The behaviors we're discussing today aren't normal expressions of sibling rivalry or family tension. They represent serious issues that require professional treatment." "So I'm crazy now?" she challenged bitterly. "Perfect Patrick is physically ill, so I must be mentally ill? How convenient." "This isn't about labels or comparisons," Dr. Greenberg continued. "It's about recognizing patterns of behavior that are causing harm and finding healthier ways to address the underlying feelings." The intervention lasted nearly 5 hours, cycling through Amanda's anger, denial, bargaining, and finally, exhaustion. When she finally fell silent, my father took her hands in his. "We love you, Amanda," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Nothing will ever change that. But love means wanting what's best for you, and right now what's best is getting help. We'll support you through that process, but we can't support behaviors that harm others or yourself." In that moment of vulnerability, I saw a glimpse of the little sister I had protected on the playground decades ago, before competition and resentment had corroded our relationship. Despite everything, I found myself hoping for her recovery almost as much as I had focused on my own. "I'm willing to forgive everything that's happened," I told her sincerely. "If you're willing to get help and work toward change, not for my sake, but for yours. You deserve a life that isn't consumed by these feelings." Something in my words seemed to reach her. Her shoulders sagged, and for perhaps the first time in our adult lives, her response wasn't calculated or performative. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted in a small voice. "The thoughts just come, and they feel so real, and before I know it, I've convinced myself they're true." Dr. Greenberg nodded encouragingly. "That's an important insight, Amanda. Recognizing that pattern is the first step toward changing it." By the end of that grueling day, Amanda had agreed to enter an intensive outpatient therapy program specializing in personality disorders and emotional regulation. The program would include individual therapy, group sessions, and psychiatric evaluation for potential medication. She also reluctantly accepted that there would be legal consequences for the identity theft that couldn't be avoided, though my parents arranged for an attorney who specialized in cases involving mental health factors. As for me, the months following my cardiac arrest focused entirely on recovery, both physical and emotional. I followed Dr. Lawson's treatment plan rigorously, gradually rebuilding my strength through cardiac rehabilitation programs. With the major source of stress in my life now being addressed, my heart condition stabilized significantly, though I would always need to be vigilant about my health. I established clear boundaries with Amanda, including no direct contact outside of supervised family therapy sessions, until her treatment team confirmed significant progress. This separation was painful but necessary, creating space for both of us to heal without triggering old patterns of interaction. 6 months after the intervention, I hosted a small gathering at my new apartment to celebrate my recovery. My parents attended, as did Jake and a few close friends who had supported me through the ordeal. Amanda was not present, as we had not yet reached the point in our respective recoveries where direct contact was advisable. To health and new beginnings, Jake toasted, raising his glass with a smile that acknowledged both the progress made and the challenges still ahead. My father, whose Parkinson's treatment had been adjusted and was showing improvement, added his own toast, and to family, in all its complicated forms. The gathering was modest but meaningful, a marker of how far I had come from those terrifying moments when my heart literally stopped. I had faced mortality and emerged with a deeper appreciation for life and its fragility, as well as a clearer understanding of which relationships nurtured me and which ones had become toxic. Around the same time, I began sharing my experience with a support group for survivors of cardiac events. Many members were older, surprised to see someone in their 30s joining their ranks. Their stories of recovery gave me hope, while my experience with familial stress as a contributing factor to heart problems resonated with many who had similar, if less extreme, experiences. Stress doesn't just feel bad, I explained during one session. It can literally kill you. Learning to recognize toxic situations and remove yourself from them isn't selfish, it's survival. These conversations inspired me to develop a foundation focused on supporting people with hidden medical conditions, particularly those complicated by family dynamics or disbelief from others. The Heart of the Matter Foundation began small but quickly gained traction, offering resources, community, and advocacy for those whose invisible illnesses were dismissed or minimized by family members. Amanda's journey was longer and more complex. The therapy program revealed what Dr. Harris had suspected. She exhibited strong traits of narcissistic personality disorder with borderline features, a challenging combination that explained much of her behavior toward me. This wasn't an excuse for her actions, but it provided a framework for understanding and treatment. The identity theft charges resulted in probation rather than jail time, with mandatory continuation of psychiatric treatment as a condition. This legal consequence, while difficult, provided the external structure Amanda needed to remain committed to her recovery when internal motivation wavered. 1 year after my cardiac arrest, Amanda and I met face-to-face in a session facilitated by both our therapists. The meeting was carefully structured to prevent falling into old patterns, with clear boundaries and therapeutic interventions when needed. "I've been working to understand why I did the things I did," Amanda began, her voice steadier than I remembered. The jealousy was so intense it felt like I was drowning in it. "I convinced myself that hurting you was the only way to make myself feel better." "Has that changed?" I asked cautiously. She nodded. "The thoughts still come sometimes, but I can recognize them now for what they are, distortions rather than reality. And I'm learning other ways to cope with those feelings when they arise." "I'm genuinely glad to hear that, Amanda. Your recovery matters to me, even after everything." "Why?" she asked, genuine confusion in her expression. "After what I did, why would you care at all?" "Because you're my sister," I answered simply. "And because holding on to anger would only damage my heart in a different way." That meeting was the first of many carefully managed interactions, gradually rebuilding a relationship that would never be the same as before, but might eventually become something healthier and more authentic. We would never be the close siblings of childhood dreams, but we could learn to coexist with mutual respect and appropriate boundaries. My parents, too, underwent their own healing process. Family therapy sessions revealed patterns they had unknowingly established during our childhood, the unintentional favoritism, the competitive dynamics they had fostered. They worked diligently to change these patterns, learning to relate to each of their adult children as individuals rather than as competing entities. We didn't know the damage we were doing. My mother confessed during one particularly emotional session. We thought a little healthy competition would motivate you both. We never imagined it would turn into this. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time, I assured her. And you're doing the right things now, which is what matters. As the 1-year anniversary of my cardiac arrest approached, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey from near death to a new life. The experience had fundamentally changed me, forcing a re-evaluation of priorities and relationships that might otherwise have taken decades or never occurred at all. My career continued, but with a better balance between professional achievement and personal well-being. I had learned the hard way that success meant little if your health was sacrificed in its pursuit. I now dedicated a portion of my architectural practice to designing spaces specifically for healing and recovery, bringing my professional skills in line with my personal values. The Heart of the Matter Foundation grew steadily, helping others navigate the complex intersection of physical health, family dynamics, and personal boundaries. Each person who found support through our resources represented a small victory, a life potentially saved from the dangerous consequences of toxic stress. Amanda continued her treatment, with gradual improvement and occasional setbacks, as is typical with personality disorders. We maintained clear boundaries while supporting her recovery process from an appropriate distance. Some days were harder than others, but the path forward was clearer than it had ever been. My parents, now more aware of family dynamics, worked to support both their children without enabling destructive behaviors. My father's Parkinson's remained stable with treatment, and my mother found unexpected fulfillment in volunteer work with heart disease awareness programs, channeling her experience into helping others. One evening, as I sat on the porch of my new home, watching the sunset with Jake beside me, he asked a question that gave me pause. After everything that happened, do you regret moving back to Westfield? I considered carefully before answering. No, I don't think I do. As painful as this journey has been, it forced issues to the surface that might have festered indefinitely otherwise. Amanda might never have gotten help. I might never have discovered my heart condition until it was too late. Sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most necessary destinations, and that was the truth I had discovered through this ordeal. My heart had literally stopped, but in that stopping and restarting, it had found a healthier rhythm. My family had been fractured but was slowly healing into something more authentic. The truth, however painful, had ultimately set us all free to begin again. What would you say to others facing similar family crises? Jake asked. Always supportive of my foundation work, I'd tell them that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for the person hurting you, is to establish firm boundaries. That forgiveness doesn't mean allowing harmful behavior to continue, that your health, physical and emotional, is not something you should sacrifice for anyone, even family. And most importantly, that healing is possible, even from the deepest wounds, if you're willing to face the truth and do the difficult work of recovery. As the last light faded from the sky, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for too long. My heart, once literally stopped by stress and genetic predisposition, now beat steadily in my chest, a constant reminder of both my fragility and my resilience. The relationship with my sister would never be simple, but it was at least now based in reality rather than fiction, and I had found purpose in helping others navigate similar journeys, turning personal trauma into communal healing. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed a relationship in your life? A turning point where things could never go back to how they were before? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories of healing and transformation, and share with someone who might be struggling with toxic family dynamics. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you health, both in your heart and in your relationships.